to be right, or may be right about the officiating. And her being an unrivaled owner may be a big fly in the ointment in all of this. Also, the fact that she disclosed the situation, a conversation between herself and the commissioner, in some way has clearly backfired, and one of the owners comes right out and says that. This is really interesting.
An ESPN investigation has revealed fresh developments regarding the ongoing tension between WNBA franchise holders, Minnesota Lynx star Napheesa Collier, and League Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. The situation appears increasingly complicated, with ownership groups recognizing the necessity for transformation within the organization, yet expressing significant displeasure with how concerns were publicly voiced. Multiple perspectives suggest validity exists on various sides. Engelbert's position may indeed be vulnerable. Collier's complaints about referee standards could hold merit. However, her involvement as co-founder of the unrivaled basketball league creates potential complications.
This is really interesting. Right here, a change is a must. Have WNBA owners lost faith in Engelbert? I would say most of them have. But one of the comments, very interesting. All right, they're talking about the fact that the commissioner got booed when the Aces won the trophy. Could that be the final time that we see Engelbert serving as WNBA commissioner?
Perhaps most damaging was her decision to make public certain confidential discussions she'd held with the league's top executive. This disclosure seems to have produced unintended negative consequences. According to reporting, most franchise holders have diminished confidence in Engelbert's leadership abilities. One particularly revealing statement came from a team executive who warned that sustained conflict with elite athletes represents a dangerous trajectory for any organization. The executive characterized such situations as inevitably destructive. Discord had been building throughout the season as coaching staffs and athletes voiced dissatisfaction with officiating quality.
Could that be the final time that we see Engelbert serving as WNBA commissioner? Quote, once you have that kind of fighting with your best players, one team executive told ESPN, it's, quote, a death spiral. Tensions brewed throughout the WNBA season as players and coaches expressed frustration with officiating, and CBA negotiations intensified. But the conversation shifted specifically towards Engelbert during the WNBA Finals. On September 26th, Minnesota coach Cheryl Reeve was ejected.
Collective bargaining agreement discussions were simultaneously becoming more intense. The spotlight specifically targeted Engelbert during the championship series. During a September 26th contest, Minnesota head coach Cheryl Reeve received ejection following an outburst directed at officials concerning a missed foul on a sequence where Collier sustained injury. Reeve delivered harsh criticism of league officiating afterward, resulting in financial penalties and a one-game ban. Following Minnesota's playoff elimination, Collier used her media availability to condemn organizational leadership and revealed portions of formerly confidential exchanges with Engelbert. Collier alleged the commissioner suggested Caitlin Clark should feel appreciative because Clark earned $16 million through endorsements, claiming that without the platform the league provides, Clark would earn nothing.
He was ejected after erupting at the referees over a non-call on a play where Collier was injured. Reeve decried the league officiating in a scathing post-game address and was fined and suspended one game. In her exit interview a few days later, the Lynx were eliminated. Collier denounced WNBA leadership and publicized parts of previously private conversations she had with Engelbert.
Additionally, Collier claimed Engelbert stated athletes should express profound gratitude for the media contract she negotiated. Numerous players across the league expressed solidarity with Collier. Prior to the championship opener, Engelbert addressed media members, stating there were substantial inaccuracies in the remarks attributed to her by Collier, specifically denying certain statements regarding Clark. Nevertheless, Engelbert acknowledged that if athletes feel underappreciated by the organization, improvement is necessary on her part. The commissioner's primary responsibility involves representing ownership interests rather than player concerns. This remains standard across professional sports leagues.
In private conversations she had with Engelbert. Collier claimed Engelbert said Caitlin Clark, quote, should be grateful. She makes $16 million off the court because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. And that, quote, players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them. A swath of WNBA players publicly backed Collier. In her address to reporters before Game 1 of the finals, Engelbert said there were, quote,
Engelbert operates under this structure, with additional oversight from NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who maintains significant influence over WNBA operations. Various franchise holders and executives provided candid assessments. One owner stated a preference for replacement if given voting power on the matter. However, significant leadership changes appear unlikely during ongoing collective bargaining negotiations. Engelbert indicated at the championship that she's never abandoned her responsibilities. Another owner expressed concern that dismissing Engelbert currently would demonstrate organizational weakness and create poor optics.
There were, quote, a lot of inaccuracies in the comments attributed to her by Collier and denied saying specific statements regarding Clark. But Engelbert acknowledged if the players in the W don't feel appreciated and valued by the league, then we have to do better and I have to do better. So, still, the commissioner is primarily tasked with representing the owners, not the players. That's a fact. Commissioner always works for the owners. Now,
this same owner made a particularly striking comment about Collier's actions, stating intense disapproval of the private discussion being made public. The owner acknowledged believing Engelbert should potentially be removed, yet Collier's disclosure made them resistant to that outcome. This represents clear evidence of the strategy backfiring. When ownership explicitly states that revealing confidential conversations reduces their willingness to make a change they otherwise support, the public campaign has clearly failed to achieve its intended purpose. Ownership groups appear to be asserting their authority, unwilling to have decisions dictated by external pressure. Dealing with billionaire franchise holders means recognizing they resist having their authority challenged or decisions forced upon them through public pressure campaigns.
Always works for the owners. Now, this commissioner kind of works for the owners and Adam Silver because Adam Silver is the one that really works for the owners above all. So a lot of different owners and executives gave their feelings about Engelbert here. Quote, if I had a vote, one owner said, I would probably ask for a replacement. It seems unlikely that any major leadership change will happen while the CBA negotiations continue, and Engelbert told her.
One of the previously mentioned owners expressed belief in Collier's account but suggested Engelbert's communication approach has been problematic. This owner noted that when challenges arise from either athletes or ownership, questioning can sometimes carry dismissive undertones. The owner suggested collective bargaining discussions and other negotiations inevitably involve difficulty but might have been less adversarial with better communication and relationship development. Uncertainty exists about whether damaged relationships can be repaired. Another industry source acknowledged Engelbert's significant commercial accomplishments, reminding people how challenging circumstances were upon her arrival. The source suggested time will determine outcomes, noting that Silver appears troubled by current developments.
And Engelbert told reporters at the finals, quote, she's never been a quitter. Quote, if you fire her now, it's admitting weakness. It's a terrible look for the league, another owner said. I can't stand what Collier did. That private conversation, it makes me not want to fire her, even though I think she should be fired. That's a clear backfire.
This implies Silver may recognize the necessity of leadership transition while being reluctant to execute it. League sources consulted by ESPN unanimously agreed that if Engelbert wishes to continue, she must repair relationships and establish genuine trust with athletes. One team executive emphasized that change is mandatory, whether through Engelbert modifying her approach to athlete relations or through
his name with the apostrophe being a whistle. But at the end of the day, I don't actually think Aaliyah said it. But Age is running with it. And look, this is always one of these situations with sports people. She could be going and pulling a Shaq where it's like he just made up a story about David Robinson to like in order to kind of garner hype and kind of give himself a reason to care more. But yeah, sorry.
However, if relationship repair occurs with key individuals and a favorable collective bargaining agreement gets finalized, continuation becomes possible, though challenging. The collective bargaining agreement timeline extends 3 to 5 months. This period allows building positive momentum both interpersonally and professionally. Success in both areas could create viable pathways forward. Ownership recognizes that work stoppages damage the league. However, returning to the critical owner statement reveals significant implications.
Sorry. But yeah, it's one of those things. Age of Whistle, the only special whistle I know. Somebody whistling here in the Aces Championship parade. And look, the Aces absolutely... I mean this. When people are like, everyone counted out the Aces, it was like, no, everyone predicted you to make the finals. Loads of people predicted you to win. It's like, no. When they lost by 53 points, everybody counted them out. Including me, including you. We all counted the Aces out. Let's be completely honest here. We all counted the Aces out. And if you are man enough to admit that you counted the Aces out,
the owner, who cannot tolerate how Collier handled the private conversation, explicitly stated this action reduces their willingness to pursue dismissal despite believing it might be appropriate. Franchise holders are essentially asserting their position, expressing disapproval of both the message delivery method and the revelation of confidential discussions between Collier and Engelbert. Understanding exists regarding Collier's motivations. However, many believe she was poorly positioned to be the spokesperson for these concerns. Collier has experienced declining support among portions of the fan base since making her statements.
And if you are man enough to admit that you counted the Aces out, subscribe! We are trying to catch up to where we once were. We have lost 30 subscribers over the last couple of days, and we're trying to catch up by 30 subscribers. And if you're man enough to admit that, you counted the Aces out and you were wrong, subscribe. And I said by saying that, I'm probably losing an extra 10 subscribers. But, yeah, she's supposed to talk shit for everyone has something to say. It's called keeping a receipt. Tell AB step her game up, better luck next season. I mean, AB outplayed her in that series. I'm going to be very honest. Leah Boston outplayed AJ Wilson.
Initial reactions strongly supported her complaints about officiating quality and calls for Engelbert's removal. Legitimate criticisms exist regarding Engelbert's performance, particularly concerning inadequate response to physical targeting of Caitlin Clark throughout the previous season. However, Collier did not publicly advocate for Clark during that period. Despite similar officiating concerns existing, the revelation of private conversations created complications. The owner's statement about reduced willingness to pursue necessary changes, specifically because of public disclosure methods, suggests ownership views this as inappropriate leverage.
AB outplayed her in that series. I'm going to be very honest. Leah Boston outplayed AJ Wilson in that series. She did. She just did. Actually, you know what? I'll say this. It was close. It was real close. It was real close. But AJ Wilson out there, talking about the special whistle. Talking about, I don't have a special whistle. Calling out about that. Calling out players who are saying she's a special whistle. And
this represents a genuine backfire because alternative approaches existed. Private meetings among relevant parties could have addressed these concerns. Including Caitlin Clark in direct conversations might have been constructive given her central role in growth discussions. The situation demonstrates how message delivery and messenger selection significantly impact outcomes, even when underlying concerns have validity. Ownership's defensive response to perceived public pressure potentially compromises necessary organizational changes, creating a complex situation where appropriate reforms may be delayed due to how concerns were raised rather than the merit of the concerns themselves.
I have to say, it's one of those things where she has the most special whistle of specialist of special whistles. She is absolutely the most special of special whistles. And look, I think it's fine to admit that, while also saying it's fine that, she can, she's allowed, celebrate.
Looking ahead to the upcoming campaign, the matchup between the Fever and the Aces appears destined to become one of the league's premier confrontations. Their postseason encounter generated massive viewership numbers, actually surpassing even the championship round in terms of audience engagement. The attention this particular matchup received was remarkable and historic for the playoffs. There's an interesting narrative surrounding Aaliyah Boston and whether she actually made public statements about A'ja Wilson receiving preferential treatment from officials. Upon closer examination, it seems Boston may not have directly voiced these criticisms publicly.
Celebrate. She's allowed to celebrate and, you know, oh, you said this, you said that, and you know what? That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But look, this year is coming into next year. I think one of the big rivalry. The big rivalry is screw the Chicago Sky. They stink. The Chicago Sky stink. The Mercury were pathetic in the finals. They were absolutely pathetic. Like they just completely they simultaneously crashed out. And
the discourse around Wilson getting favorable calls has circulated widely throughout basketball circles, with numerous observers and analysts making this claim repeatedly. Various social media content creators have even produced graphics incorporating whistle imagery into Wilson's name. However, evidence suggests Boston herself may not have been the source of these specific comments, yet Wilson appears to be treating it as though she did. This situation bears resemblance to classic sports psychology tactics, similar to when certain athletes fabricate perceived slights from opponents to generate additional competitive fire and emotional investment in upcoming contests. During the championship festivities, Wilson addressed the whistleblowing controversy directly, essentially stating that the only whistles heard were those celebrating the Aces title victory.
And I don't even know how to describe what the Mercury did in the finals, but it was pathetic. The Aces versus the Liberty. The Liberty, I mean, have just... They haven't matched... They matched each other in playoffs last year. The Liberty destroyed them. The Liberty beat them. The Liberty beat them every time in the regular season. I think Ace might have won one in the regular season during their streak. The Aces versus the Lynx isn't really a rivalry because, well, I'm going to be honest, the Lynx are just better, but still, the Aces are the champions. The Lynx got injured, the Aces benefited most from that.
The franchise faced considerable doubt after their devastating loss, where they were dominated significantly. Following that crushing defeat, virtually every analyst and fan dismissed their championship prospects entirely. The consensus was universal in writing off their chances completely. Anyone honest about their predictions during that moment would acknowledge they expected the Aces to be eliminated. Wilson's championship comments included references to keeping mental notes of criticism and suggested Boston should elevate her performance for the following campaign.
Champions. The Lynx got injured, the Aces benefited most from that, and the Aces won a title. I think the real rivalry, because there is animosity there. The Aces fans, like, the Aces and the Fever don't like each other. It's clear. Like, with what you call it, with Aaliyah Boston and Aja Wilson, just because they went to South Carolina does not mean they have to like each other. And I think that's one of the misconceptions. And you can see it, people are like, oh, you know, Dawn Staley doesn't like Aaliyah. I was like, oh, Dawn Staley's there celebrating Aaliyah Boston as well.
Interestingly, when examining their head-to-head performance during that playoff confrontation, Boston actually held her own quite effectively against Wilson. The statistical and performance comparison between them was extremely competitive throughout the series. Boston demonstrated she could match Wilson's impact on the court. Yet, Wilson continues addressing the referee favoritism discussion, pushing back against accusations of receiving special treatment. The reality remains that among all players in the league, Wilson benefits from perhaps the most generous officiating calls available.